this is a simple chapter. Try to understand the concept here. Communication is a process of exchange of information between two users. So this information may be in the form of voice, video, or data. So what this process consists of? So you know the information which may be in the form of voice, video, data. So when we want to transmit in the communication system, so this information is required to be converted into a format that is suitable for the medium. So for which, suppose, for example, if it is a voice, this voice is required to be converted into electrical signal. And if video and data are already in the form of digital signal, then there may not be any conversion required. So in that, the transducer may not be required. But for voice, a transducer is required, like for example, microphone, which converts our voice speech information into electrical signal. And this electrical signal is usually in the form of continuously varying analog signal. So this analog signal will be first converted into digital signal in the first stage of the transmitter. So once it is converted into digital form, so whatever the extra bits, that is redundant bits, are there in the information is required to be removed, such that the bandwidth requirement of the medium is reduced. And another important in the transmitter, the processing, the function of the transmitter is, so along with the data. So here another important process that is taking place in this communication system is synchronization is very much required between the transmitter and the receiver. So what is that synchronization? You know that all the digital circuitry requires a clock for its working, and this clock, whatever is working in the transmitter, used in the transmitter, the same clock with the same frequency and phase should also work in the receiver. So we need to synchronize the clock that are working in the transmitter and receiver. So for this synchronization purpose, we need to send a clock information along with the data. So such that the receiver will try to latch on to that clock, and it will also try to work with the same phase and frequency. So for this process, we cannot send the clock separately in the another media. So it has to be, so it is always sent along with the information only. So how that is done, again, it is a long discussion. So here, whatever the data bits are there, so some transitions are introduced purposely for carrying the clock information. There are different coding techniques where the clock information, that is transitions, are introduced, such that clock information is transmitted from the transmitter to receiver. And another important process that is taking place in the transmitter is error. So error check bits are required to be added along with the data. So such that whatever error that is taking place in the media due to noise and interference, so that has to be controlled or has to be removed. These errors are required to be taken out, so in the receiving end. So that is based on the check bits that are added here. So error check and control is required at the receiver end on the basis of check bits that are added in the transmitting end. And another process that will be required in the transmitter is multiplexing. What is this multiplexing? We cannot use a separate media for each user. So we have to, more than one user information will be sent in a single common media. So for that process, we are required to go for multiplexing. There are different types of multiplexing, like it may be usually for digital, we go for time division multiplexing. There is another type which is usually used for analog signal is frequency division multiplexing. And for example, if we are going for optical fiber communication system, then we are going for a wavelength division multiplexing. So there are different types of multiplexing techniques that are adopted in the transmitter based on the media that we are making use. And then it also, the user information is subjected to coding. So there are different types of encoding techniques, usually broadly divided into source coding, channel coding, There are different coding techniques also, line coding. So there are different coding techniques. So here, based on the medium, we are going for a coding. So source coding as well as channel coding. Channel coding is a must, which will take care of the error check. Then we have the suppose if usually if we are using making use of wireless or open space as the media for transmission of the information, then we need to go for modulation also, such that it can be transmitted with the help of antenna. So and even sometimes in the copper wire also we need to go for modulation for achieving the higher bit rate transmission. So bandwidth it can be improved upon by going for modulation also. So so next one is once the information after processing all this process that is taking place in the transmitter, it is now put onto the media. So in the media, basically this medium is broadly divided into wired and wireless. In the wired, we have copper wire, coaxial cable, and optical fiber cable. So these are all wired types of usually used for the transmission of the information. And we also have the wireless type of media where open space is being used for carrying the user information either in the form of radio signal or optical signal. So usually optical signal, if you are transmitting the open space, usually referred as FSO, free space optics. And the radio signal, of course, presently we are making use for all our communication systems. So that is in the through the open space after modulation. So in the media, the another thing is in the media, the information is subjected to attenuation, whatever the electrical signal that is put onto the media. So any media, so it is naturally having some attenuation. So the information is subjected to attenuation, and sometimes we need to go for either by using repeater and all, we need to enhance its signal strength for further routing. Another one is each media, whatever we have different types of media, they have their different bandwidth. So different bandwidth that is user information carrying information per usually expressed bits per second for digital signal transmission. And if it is analog signal transmission, usually we refer as hertz in the form of hertz for the bandwidth. So depending upon the media, we are required to take care of various processes that are taking place in the transmitter. And in the receiver, so whatever we have seen, the process involved in the transmitter are taking place in the reverse in the process that will be taking place in the receiver. So if it is an open space, first it is required to be demodulated, and then demultiplexing is required, de-encoding, and then of course first once it is demodulated from the data, clock information is taken out for synchronization of the receiver, and accordingly finally further the digital signal is sent to the transducer for converting back to the original form that is required to be that is transmitted by the source. So then finally that information that will be received by the user either in the form of voice, video, and data. So this is the total process that will be taking place in the communication system. So it is a simple block diagram to understand the concept, but in actual scenario, it will be we have different equipments to take care of the total transmission. It is only a point-to-point transmission that is shown.